Yes, we can hear you. We're on and live now.
Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the call. Sorry, you're having a couple of technical difficulties getting on. My name is Lenina Nadal, and I'm currently the communications coordinator at Global Action Project, and I'll be moderating this webinar today. Just to give a little intro, this webinar is called Breaking Borders, Redefining Sanctuary. This is the second webinar in a series on how sanctuary movements in the United States are integrating policy fights, grassroots organizing, youth media, and storytelling to defend, protect, and expand the sanctuary movement. And while we may know of sanctuary movements as religious institutions that protect refugees and immigrants in war-torn countries, from war-torn countries, or more contemporary acts of cities and universities declaring themselves sanctuaries in order to protect undocumented residents from deportation, the movements that we're talking about in this webinar today are more expansive. We're addressing here also youth and community media and transformative media organizing as a tool. As some of you know, Global Action Project has been doing this work for years in terms of figuring out how youth are changing narratives, and we're going to be looking at a field scan of youth media called Media in Action, and looking at how these are tools that are being used in the sanctuary movement. And we want to thank the funders collaboratives on youth organizing for hosting the webinar. And I'm going to allow Mona Ye to speak a little bit about Funders Collaborative.
Great, thank you, Lenina. Do we have the slides available? I just had a couple, so folks can follow along. Or if not, that's okay. Well, anyway, my name is Mona Ye, and I'm the Communications Director over at the Funders Collaborative on Youth Organizing. FCYO, otherwise known as FCYO, we are a grant-making and capacity-building intermediary that invests in youth organizing as critical strategy for social change. So we bridge funders and organizers to support youth organizing and its commitment to systemic change and social justice. We feel really privileged to be able to partner with Global Action Project today on this webinar, featuring all of these great panelists. So Breaking Borders, Redefining Sanctuary is actually a part of a program at FCYO called Youth Core, and that's a set of activities to help build a stronger and more stable youth organizing field in the US. So Youth Core was launched way back in 2015, and their activities bring together organizers from across to share their learnings, build relationships, and develop a common strategy. So some of those activities include grants, such as the Learning and Exchange Fund, which maybe some people in this webinar are a part of, national convenings, we'll get to in a second, and webinars, such as the one you're on today. So a brief recap, this webinar today is actually the second in a series of 2 webinars dedicated to exploring what sanctuary means. So maybe we'll do on both. We're asking, we've got a comment too, if someone could getting a little bit of someone else's typing noises. But to recap from the first webinar, we heard from organizers who are shaping the narrative and leading campaigns that define sanctuary, led by frontline communities. So those panelists included folks from Mijente, BYP100, and DRUM, and they all shared really interesting campaign examples, tools, lessons learned, and their experiences working in coalition to define sanctuary as it relates to land, cooperative, and safe spaces. Oh, thanks, there are the slides. Could you go to the next slide, please? And well, that's Youth Core. One more slide after that, please. Thank you. And this next slide will give everyone a heads up for 2 upcoming FCYO events that hopefully we can put on your radars. The first event specifically targeted at funders. I know looking at our registration list, we had a handful of funders on there. So if you're on there, or maybe some youth organizers who have some great funders in their networks that they could pass this along to. It's called Youth in Action, Growing Youth-Led Social Change in California. This is going to be the first in a series of funder briefings and learning sessions. It'll be August 1st through the 2nd in Los Angeles, and it'll be hosted by the California Endowment And we'll be working on elevating stories of youth driving community change through organizing. And we'll really open the discussion on how funders can play a larger role to support more people in action, young people in action. And as part of a larger funder advocacy initiative aimed at educating more funders through communications and briefings about the holistic outcomes of youth organizing, and to ultimately move many more resources to the field. And last but not least, just to put on your radars, mark your calendars for November 17th through 19th. It's another part of the Youth Core programming, and it's our National Youth Convening. Hopefully some of you attended our inaugural convening back in 2015. That was in Durham, North Carolina. This one will be bigger and better, we hope. It'll be in Albuquerque, New Mexico, November 17th through 19th. And it's going to be hosted by a committee of local organizing groups, and it's chaired by the Southwest Organizing Project, or SWOP. So we really hope to see many of you out there, and we're really excited. Thanks so much.
Hi, folks. Sorry, Lenina, I think you're talking, but you're muted. You may have to start again with what you were saying.
Sorry about that, guys. All right, so do we have the slides on the chat today? Yes, the one before that, I think. Okay, so basically we just have a chat question about what would you like to learn or share about transformative media organizing and youth media and organizing. So that's just something that we should keep with us within the call. And like, if you are from an organization and you have some best practices to share, or you want to share like links to media, please share that. Or if you're just interested in something about this topic and you want to ask that, do that now. We're going to take some of those questions and put them into a chat box for later. Should I just review the agenda? Do you have the slide with the agenda? It should be a few slides before this. Hold on. No, sorry, it's like in the beginning. Okay, I'll just go through the agenda. We might want to just take a second and get the slideshow together for a second.
Hi, folks. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Let's just delay for a second and get the slides lined up with the presentation. Sure. Technology works great, but sometimes has a few glitches. We'll be there in just a second. Let's just delay for a second and get the slides lined up with the presentation. Technology works great, but sometimes has a few glitches. We'll be there in just a second.
Is this the right slide, Lenina?
No, it should be the slide with the agenda on it. No, it should be the slide with the agenda on it. So before the youth core slides, slide 4. So before the youth core slides, slide 4. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Perfect. All right. I think now we're aligned. So just a quick review of the agenda. We're going to start out talking about framing transformative media organizing and the Media and Action Report, and that will be from the Director of Global Action Project, Jesse Aronsaf-Hawley, and then we will be looking at the case studies in part 2. We're going to start out with BYP100, Janae Bonse, who's the National Public Policy Chair, BYP100. And then we will go into a case study with B. Lowe, who's the Communications Director at Mijente. And then we're going to hear about the hate-free zone organizing in Queens from Roxana Moon, from the director, who's the Director of Strategy and Training at Desi's Rising Up and Moving, and also Karina Hurtado Ocampo, who's the Community Media and Action Coordinator at Global Action Project. And last, we'll finish with some shared resources and tools and open up to questions if we have enough time. So let's get started. We could start with the next slide. I'm sorry, there was some slides entered last minute, so okay, here we go, we're good. So I'm gonna introduce Jesse, who's gonna talk a little bit about the Media and Action Report.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Jesse Aaron Saft-Hawley. I'm the Executive Director of Global Action Project. And I'm going to talk about our report, Media in Action, a field scan of media and youth organizing in the United States. So we, as a social justice youth media arts organization that has been partnering with young activists and organizers to tell their stories for over 25 years, we at Global Action Project have witnessed rapid and immense changes in the media landscape, as well as how community organizers are leveraging those changes. New digital tools and mobile platforms have reshaped the possibilities of storytelling, aesthetics, outreach, and organizing. And young people today are occupying incredible leadership roles in nationwide struggles and are using, making, and analyzing mass media, alternative media, and social media in order to amplify their messages. These are the leaders that are now employing those innovative media organizing approaches to the work to expanding Sanctuary. So we thought this field scan is especially relevant to that work because it provides us a framework that looks at what's the legacy and the shoulders that we're standing on. So in terms of the field scan, we embarked on this, this effort because we wanted to document and assess the body of work that youth media organizers are creating, its impacts, and what is needed to further media organizing practices that further visionary change. Between 2012 and 2014, with the support of Data Center and Research Action Design, we conducted surveys, focus groups, and interviews with youth organizers and leaders from a broad base of diverse, both youth and intergenerational organizations across the US. And if someone can drop the link to the report in the chat box, that would be great so everyone can see it for themselves. But I'm gonna now launch into our next slide with our first key finding. So the first key finding is that media is essential to effective youth leadership and movement building efforts. It allows youth to change discourse and play meaningful roles in movement building through their artistry, raising political awareness, and integrating that media work into base building and campaign efforts. Youth often lead the media work in the organizations that we surveyed, and respondents said that media projects have forged lasting intergenerational bonds among leaders in their organizations. So we found that media changes minds, hearts, and policies, something that we know, but that was documented in the work. Respondents are using media to document and share their stories and visions for social change, to expand their audience reach, to shift social and cultural norms, and to influence policy. In addition, participants of the research saw strong impacts of using and making media on bringing in more members, sparking political dialogue, and creating leadership opportunities for young people. Next slide, please. So a key piece of this leadership development is that media produced within a political education framework amps youth engagement and organizing, which can facilitate the study of history, power analysis, and resistance strategies. The majority of the participating organizations do media analysis as part of their ongoing program, and this informs how groups are framing and messaging around their issues, as well as their approaches to media production and outreach strategies. Next slide. Organizers see media work as key for youth leadership development, political education, and critical consciousness. Youth learn, teach, and stay involved when making media. Most respondents said that media increased youth engagement in political work, such as organizing in the community or testifying with legislators. And the majority also said that media increased the political consciousness and education of youth about the key issues that they're working on and beyond, and brought more youth into social justice organizing and activism. Next slide. So we also found that youth organizers are making and sharing and using more media than ever and across diverse platforms. Our research shows that media is a core component of the organizing landscape. And not only that, effective organizing with media is as much about process as product, most respondents reported. They noted that ideally organizations develop media strategies to work across platforms, engage youth in all aspects of the media work, and draw on the resources and skills of media partners, and target clearly defined audiences based on campaign goals. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So despite assumptions that the purpose of making media or engaging in media is to wrangle directly with the mainstream, our organizations reported that the top 3 target audiences that they were trying to reach with their media are youth who are impacted by the struggles that the groups are working on, the parents and families of young people in the broader communities, as well as allies. So this has important implications for the role of youth-led media in base building, expanding frontline communities' participation in campaigns, as well as in facilitating alliances across communities, and in working within communities, not just outside of communities, to transform consciousness and support communities to reauthor narratives about the issues that are impacting their lives. Next slide. So this graph charts the various platforms with which respondents, 1, produce, 2, distribute, and 3, consume media. Overwhelmingly, respondents said that they are creating their own media more than ever before, including in video, photography, social media, web-based media. They also intentionally work across mediums and platforms in the production and distribution processes. And so what we saw in the data was that social media augments rather than replaces other kinds of media production that might be considered more traditional, like photography and video. And a very complicated and rich landscape of media work, both in the consumption, political education, production, and media distribution campaigns. Next slide. So our last area of work was to explore what it takes to expand, scale, and sustain media organizing, and what barriers youth and intergenerational organizing groups confront when they're attempting to do this. So move quickly to the next slide. So a critical question for us was, what does it take for communities to engage with media in a way that builds power over the long haul? So advances short-term campaigns, but builds community power that can sustain itself. So can we move to the next slide, please? Organizations said that their highest priorities for their media work are to shift the way that people think about issues, reach a broader audience, in particularly other young people impacted by the campaigns, create youth leadership opportunities, and win campaigns. In order to do this, organizations identified that they need staff members, leaders, and other kinds of members who are equipped with the necessary skills to do that work, more access to equipment and resources, partnership with groups that have media capacities and resources, and strong media campaign strategies, which also takes support and training. Can we move to the next slide? So in order to do this work to scale, respondents identified the following crucial needs that are essential. So 1, so we can go back to the last slide, access to funding was number 1 to support the work. And beyond that and related to that, dedicated time of leaders, both staff and members, to implement the work at all levels, so analysis, production, and distribution. Access to equipment and software, and then training around multiple elements, which I'll get to in a second. This approach to media is critical to movement building, but we were hearing over and over is not being supported or resourced at the level that is required to sustain and scale the work. And so what we take from the data is that we need deeper investments in communities being able to lead their own media organizing efforts, and for communities to be able to take ownership of crucial narrative shift work that complements the policy campaigns that groups are working on. Next slide, please. So this slide talks a lot about what kind of training youth and intergenerational organizers are interested in that would most support their capacity to sustain and scale the work. And so the areas that there's most need is technical production, also distribution and outreach strategies. So how do we actually get the media out there to reach the audiences that we want in a strategic way? And how can that process be transformative in itself? Training on effective storytelling techniques, and training on how to launch effective media campaigns. Training on developing media curriculum and effective use of media for political education. So how do we integrate the media into the ongoing program versus just an add-on or a communication strategy? So we understand this training to be essential. If communications, media, and cultural work is to be fully integrated into organizing, it's not enough just to have a small handful of people meaningfully involved in that work. We need to invest in and support the capacity of community leaders to lead this work over the long haul. And all of this to us suggests that we need to go beyond a solely strategic communication stance of thinking about media and recognize the external and internal benefits of storytelling as a form of self-determination by young people in communities most affected by injustice, wherein youth demand better structural conditions and put forward visions for change on their own terms. Next slide, please. So through scanning the field of youth and intergenerational organizing that are already in some way doing transformative organizing, we found that many groups were using an approach that we are now calling transformative media organizing, an approach that we have been developing and thinking through with our partners at Research Action Design, among many others. Transformative media organizing is a liberatory approach to integrating media, communications, and culture work into movement building. It lies at the place where media justice and transformative organizing overlap. Next slide, please. Transformative media organizers invite members to participate in media production that is directly linked to action, is accountable to the needs and self-determination of the group whose stories are being told, and strengthens critical consciousness. This approach builds the knowledge, skills, and self-determination of participants as they create change within the media they make, be it campaign-driven media, personal narratives, or dramatic fiction. Transformative media organizers think critically about how to reach and engage people where they are, not just about what new platform is hot. Transformative media organizing is cross-platform. It includes face-to-face work, not just online work. So it happens online, offline. It includes cultural work, explores how to build attention and engagement across multiple media platforms from face-to-face to TV, from flyers and posters to social media and beyond. Great transformative media organizers do more than tell a compelling story. They invite community members to participate in media work and to take action, and they do so across platforms to reach people where they are. We see this approach as essential in today's political environment and a powerful framework for approaching the work of expanding the narrative around sanctuary and expanding the engagement of communities who are expanding sanctuary in our cities and in our country and beyond. So thank you so much for your time. Please read the full report and I'll pass it back to Lenina.
Thank you so much, Jesse. So without further ado, we are going to get into this question of how we use transformative media organizing to change the narrative around sanctuary cities. And we have Janae Bonsafe, who's the National Public Policy Chair of BYP100. And she's also going to be talking about changing narratives nationally around state violence and its effect on women, its effect on young people as well. So Janae.
Hey everyone, I'm very excited to be here. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, can we get the next slide also? Thank you. Thanks, Janae. Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So my name is Janae Bonsu from BYP100. And so I want to tell y'all a bit about what we do organizationally, and then I'm going to talk about kind of three major bodies of work that we've been doing since we've existed to shift narratives and really challenge the notion of what safety means and how to create it. And doing this to kind of lay the groundwork of what we're currently working on under the Expand Sanctuary banner. So just to get into it, BYP100 is a national member-based organization with 8 chapters of young Black folks aged 18 to 35 who are dedicated to seeing Black liberation in our lifetime. And so we aim to organize and cultivate a community within and outside of our membership that consistently demonstrates our values of group-centered leadership, transformative justice, and really being experts of our own experience. And so in doing that, we train young Black activists in direct action, grassroots organizing skills to build power. We engage in political education, policy development and advocacy, and issue-based and transformative campaigns to build the type of world that we want to live in, right? And so we do all of this through what we call a Black queer feminist lens, which is a radically inclusive approach to organizing by supporting and creating campaigns that focus on interlocking oppressions of marginalized people. And so radical intersectional organizing is the work of shifting narratives and the belief that stories have outcomes. And by shifting the narrative that people believe, we change what the possible and impossible outcomes of a story are, right? And so by organizing to alter relations of power, we can make outcomes possible for our people that the dominant narrative once deemed impossible. Next slide, please. And so, like I said, I want to talk about the transformative media organizing work to shift narratives before we actually launch the Expanded Sanctuary campaign in January. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. And so one way that I've experienced this type of narrative shifting in the context of organizing with BYP100 is through the Say Her Name campaign in Chicago and beyond. But BYP100, along with Ferguson Action, back in 2014, issued a national call to action for state violence, to end state violence against Black women, girls, and femmes. And we centered the case of Rekia Boyd in Chicago. And like, you know, in the midst of like, I mean, one could even start with Trayvon Martin, but even fast forwarding to 2014, thinking about Mike Brown and Eric Garner and Freddie Gray and all of these Black males being centered in this conversation about police violence. It was necessary for us to nuance and complicate that dominant narrative because Black women, girls, femmes also experience police violence in some of the same but also distinct gender-based ways. And so I want to share a short video of a few minutes of kind of how that campaign ensued in Chicago specifically. So, thank you. Should have sound.
If who's ever controlling the presentation can unplug their headphones, that usually worked for us in the trial.
Will, if you could unplug your headphones. Headphones.
Hey all, sorry, trying to make this work.
It's actually okay, no worries. But I will just narrate and say that so this campaign, well, the video kind of explains the story of Rekia Boyd, but I'll just say pretty briefly. In 2012, a 22-year-old Black woman named Rekia Boyd was shot and killed by a detective named Dante Servin, who was off duty at the time, but Rekia was just like hanging out with her friends in the North Lawndale neighborhood, and servant shot her in the back of the head. The bullet wasn't meant for her, but none of that matters. She's not here anymore. And so the Rukia's family has been fighting for justice for Rukia since 2012. Anita Alvarez undercharged serving with involuntary manslaughter, and the judge dismissed the case in a bench trial. And so with working with the family organizers, including folks from BYP100 and other organizations in this video, Women's All Point Bulletin, Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and more. We've been working with the family to really secure justice for Rukia and what that looks like. And so the organizations and community members in this video came to Chicago Police Headquarters every single month to their police board meetings to demand Dante Servin be fired without a pension. And this demand of termination without pension is a challenge to this default indict, convict, incarcerate notion of justice. And we use our disruptive power to speak up and out for Rukia, and even managed to shut down a board meeting claiming its illegitimacy as an accountability body for police who murder people. And so this campaign was unprecedented in that, to my knowledge, no other killing by a police officer in the city of Chicago had resulted in a termination recommendation from both the police department's investigative body and the police superintendent. And although Servin formally resigned 2 days before the hearing that would have likely terminated him, there's no doubt in my mind that his resignation was forced by our relentless organizing and direct pressure on Servin himself, the Chicago Police Department, and their oversight body. And not only that, but the political education throughout the campaign, via teach-ins, via social media, on the many ways in which Black women, girls, and femmes experience state-sanctioned intra-community and interpersonal violence were really invaluable. And there's a couple of infographics on this slide that kind of speak to, now when the video is over, I hear sound, that's so weird. Anyway, the couple of infographics on this slide speak to the other forms of state violence that that Black women face. Police violence isn't limited to being killed or brutalized by a police officer. And so in having Twitter town halls or Twitter power hours, really uplifting not just Rukia Boyd specifically, but raising awareness about state violence against Black women more broadly. So next slide, please. And so I mentioned Anita Alvarez in talking about Rukia Boyd, and wait, no, slide before that. And so Anita Alvarez is kind of the common denominator behind what was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in Chicago, when the story of Laquan McDonald, who was shot 16 times by a police officer, really fueled calls to unseat Anita Alvarez, who was Cook County State's attorney. Alvarez waited 400 days before bringing charges against Officer Van Dyke, who killed Laquan McDonald. And she only did so after a judge mandated the release of the videotape. Alvarez is basically the embodiment of what a tough on-crime prosecutor looks like. And so there's really kind of this perfect storm of factors that catalyzed this, what became a huge participatory campaign to defeat State's Attorney Alvarez. A variety of individuals and organizations worked both autonomously and collectively to educate, to incite and mobilize Cook County residents to oust her from office. Some of these individuals and groups are politicians, some are political action committees and unions that have endorsed a particular candidate. But what's really unique and different about this particular state's attorney contest is that people and groups that don't usually engage in electoral politics for different reasons really join this effort to unseat Alvarez. And so the hashtag Buy Anita, hashtag Alvarez Must Go campaign was really unique in that The lead groups and individuals involved didn't work in coordination with any particular candidate or officially endorse one. Kim Fox was Alvarez's primary opponent, and BYP100 nor Fearless Leading by the Youth or Black Lives Matter, or any of the other organizations in Chicago that were comprised of mostly young Black people never really endorsed her. But instead, we organized an outside political education campaign that relied on direct action, teach-ins, traditional canvassing, and social media. And so the photos on this slide kind of summarizes some of these tactics that took place. So like I said, actions were both autonomous and strategically planned and coordinated. Really, Assata's Daughters, BYP100, Fearless Leading by the Youth, or FLY for short, and BLM Shy really planned and executed over a dozen direct actions in less than a month. And so with actually, I'm gonna go to the next slide and play this video. But we really mapped out a strategy of social media awareness and public disruption under the Buy Anita hashtag. And this video kind of gives you a visual representation of what that looks like. So go ahead and run that.
Confirmed, pursuit engaged. All units be advised, we have a pursuit in progress. Units on non-essential calls directed to clear and stand by to assist. Essential to all units. Officers require assistance. Roger that. Stay real right here, my nigga. Brought to you by yours truly. That nigga Tweak. Let's go. We do it for the people, shot. For the people, shot. We do it for the people. We do it for the freedom side. For the freedom side. We do it for the freedom. Let's go. And we don't fuck with 12 shots. Fuck with 12 shots. And we don't fuck with 12. Nah, we don't fuck with 12 shots. Fuck with 12 shots. We don't fuck with 12. Hey, black is fucking beautiful. Let me state that for the record. But we're portrayed as animals, savages that are reckless. I'm from a city where if you look like me, you not protected. The boys in blue who down to shoot, play shit on you in seconds. We dealing with a system that ain't shit but greed, killing cops. Same killing cops over east, posted on every block. Same killing cops that locked you up for selling weed and box. I was so briefly turned around and so they killed the clock. Yo, we're willing to stop. They don't want to see us reach the top. I live in the hood with no food stores, but they will make a lot. Mama raising kids, why? Cause they lock up the block. They gonna see us down and out and take everything we got in a hole when I'm blood robbing. Then we finna come with you. You wanna be the Alvarez, get it too comfortable. Need to resign the time to sound, nobody fucks with you, so the hell with you. And your tourists that don't come back to look, we taking the L, taking bullets and taking crap. And all that robbing dollars, closing our clinics, getting closed off, not like handling this fuck about the structure is way overdue. Lying to your teeth when you talking, and we go both of you. Couldn't even breathe, my nigga, he's no Congress.
I actually want to pause the video here and highlight a few things. So we ran a social media hashtag, the hashtag Where's Anita, that kind of is reminiscent of imagery of the Where's Waldo book series. And so this is where, this is an example of why this campaign was so participatory. The hashtag Where's Anita was soliciting the public's assistance in tracking Alvarez's re-election events. So anytime someone saw Anita, whether she was, whether it was a scheduled fundraising event or a scheduled speaking engagement, or whether she was just out to eat, the hashtag Where's Anita really brought the public in, and organizers showed up to disrupt her with reminders of why Black youth wanted her removed from office. And in addition, we had train takeovers, and just other ways that the online media and on the ground action were really aligned. In addition to more traditional voter outreach, teach-ins, and old-fashioned door knocking. And so these collective efforts are really what brought Alvarez down, and in addition to the assistance of non-Black groups and groups that aren't specifically Black-led that have pursued, this target. And so that's kind of just a summary of that campaign, and I will end with the Stop the Cops from Black Futures. So if you can advance to the next slide, please. So Mijente is also going to be presenting today right after me. And so I just want to introduce them sort of and end with my spiel by saying that the first time that I met Mijente in the Not One More campaign, as well as organized communities against deportation, was about 2 years ago. And it was a foreshadowing of this moment where the seeds for real intentional relationship building were sown. In October 2015, law enforcement leadership from over 80 countries gathered with their corporate backers in the thousands in Chicago to share tactics and strategies. And so in a city where Black communities are chronically disinvested in and policing is highly racialized, we couldn't let that happen. And so Mijente and the Not One More campaign really helped us ante up and train to execute the largest civil disobedience that we'd ever done at that time by shutting down entry points to the International Association of the Chiefs of Police Conference, and organized a counter conference called the I Shocked the Sheriff Conference. If you see on the image on the top right is a infographic about the Twitter town hall that we had leading up to that conference. And so basically this was a civil disobedience that demonstrated that the resources being harbored by policing institutions, both domestically and globally, could literally save our lives if they were instead invested in us. And that's where the hashtag Fund Black Futures was born. And it laid the groundwork for the invest, divest narrative and today's expanded sanctuary work that B will talk more about. Because across the country, cities allocate a large percentage of their budget and resources to police departments. And we really firmly believe with our whole selves that a more effective tool for increasing community safety and reducing crime is to invest in communities, community programs, community organizations, housing, and all of the things that we really need to create a sanctuary city that is safe for everyone and not just some people. And as the image on the bottom left and right hand corner shows, state violence is broader than police violence, and it affects us in so many different ways, and we have to be creative about how we invest in our people in order to keep us safe. And so with that, I will pass it on to Dee to pick up on what our real sanctuary work looks like.
Beautiful, thanks so much, Janae. And Will, can I take over your screen? Cool. So we'll try a video to start that features Janae as well as my co-worker Tanya Unsueta. I'm B-Lo from Mijente. I do our communications work. And I want to zoom in on Expanded Sanctuary and then zoom out on kind of our theory of how media plays a role in transformative social change, and then show some of the examples of what that looks like in our current campaign. So let's see if this video will work for us to show how BYP and Mijente work to populate this frame about expanding sanctuary. Doesn't just mean 4 walls of a church, and it doesn't just mean trusting police if they don't work with ICE, but it actually means investing in communities and defunding policing of them. And we don't have volume. Wonderful. Well, we'll share the URL for that in the chat, and you can see, like, one of the things that we're going to point out is that we've lived through a media revolution in terms of how meaning is made and how things are shared. And so videos today, it's not enough to just get in the newspaper, but it's actually going to where people are consuming meaning today. and optimizing what we make to really be about how people scan things while they're riding the bus. Like you see the flying text on here, and built to share based on what people care about, what their meaning is. And so let's zoom out and let's start for a second with some quotes from our adversaries. Karl Rove was the Steve Bannon of the George W. Bush administration. And he says, when he was talking to the New York Times one day, he says, "The problem with you and people like you is that you believe that solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality. That's not the way the world really works anymore." Karl Rove says, "We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality, we'll act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to study what we do." And so to me, I take this to mean that our task is not just one of raising awareness or recruiting or informing people, but our task is actually one of creating a new reality. Jose Lopez of the Puerto Rican Cultural Center in Chicago, he says that national liberation is the process of oppressed people writing themselves back into a history that would have them erased. And so for us, organizing itself is the process of changing the narrative from a world where oppressed people deserve the treatment they receive and are objects, to one where they are the subjects, the change agents, and the definers of their own dignity, and where they get to promote a new vision of a better world. And so for as a long time, I'm trying to change the slide, there we go. For a long time as communications people, we thought that getting into the New York Times or getting onto MSNBC was the pinnacle of what we could accomplish. But this quote from Trump's digital director, it was said 2 weeks before he won the election, shows that meaning is made in a different way and in different places now. He says, if the New York Times and cable news actually mattered, they would have been polling as the campaign at 1%. And so what did they know? Sean Spicer, on his first day in office, was asked if now that the regime is the president of the country as opposed to just a campaign, would they be changing to be able to represent the entire country? And Spicer says on behalf of Trump, "It was never our intention to win the majority. In this country, you have to win the Electoral College. That was our plan. We succeeded. And now we're in the White House." And so what did they know that we didn't necessarily know? They knew that they had a base, that if they played to it, they could win the election by consolidating that support. And they knew that the way they communicated happened in different ways than before. Because really, we're living in an age where we've lived through a revolution in how media happens. We go from a people who were writing drawings on cave walls to the printing press allowing for people to be able to propagate and spread their message through written text across the way. The radio that allowed FDR, for example, to speak directly to the American public without having to go through reporters and editors. The television brought us the end of the radio star. JFK beat Nixon in this presidential debate based not just on what he said, but also his looks and the imagery. In that era, you have the era of Selma, where if you're able to get onto evening news, that's the one place that the entire country was looking for definition, meaning of what's happening in the world. But cable news changed that from 6 p.m. at night to a 24-hour news cycle. And then internet publishing changed that so that you see a democratization of media, but you also see the niches that we're moved into, where each of us are put into our own filter bubble, where each of us are only getting the media that actually affirms what we already believe. And then finally, we live in a social media era. No one knows this better than our president today. So part of the question that we have to ask as we're thinking about transformative media is, are we producing media for the age we're living in? Or are we still producing media and using the strategies of previous media ages? So it's pretty seamless to go from Janae to me, because I was going to say that we were super inspired to get to support BYP in the shut down the IACP and stop the cops action, where organized communities against deportations, Mijente, the Not One More campaign, got to support this direct action, where for oppressed people to be able to have even this debate of messaging, narrative, and meaning, you have to build a platform. You have to use campaigning as the way to create the stage for the theater to be seen by the public. The president can just tweet. Elected officials can just hold press conferences. But for marginalized voices, drastic action like climbing atop a ladder and locking yourself to it, or locking your neck to the ladder, is the way that communities have to work to be heard. And so in 2015, we supported this action because we really saw the potential of the framework of defunding the police and funding Black futures. And through it, it wasn't just an act of solidarity where we showed up and supported their work. But like Janae said, it was the start of a relationship, and one that really transformed our own work. Here, a month later, you see a similar action where we shut down the main thoroughfare to Chicago's downtown. And we took that message of defund the police, and it transformed the immigrant rights movement, where previously we had been really technical, talking about prosecutorial discretion or deferred action or this program or that program. But it really became as simple as dismantle ICE, that the federal funding that goes to ICE, the $18 billion that goes to immigration enforcement, would much better serve our communities and serve our safety, and if it was invested in different ways. And so we see this spectacle that we create, turning ourselves into public actors, one that we shared as it was happening on social media. You can see the photo, the breaking news in the title as a way to optimize sharing. And just through our Facebook alone, it reaches 57,000 people that day. But how do we insert ourselves into the narrative? Through spectacle and direct action like this. So you see it enter into the discussion in the Tribune. It becomes the front page of OI, saying that we're asking to dismantle ICE. And then when we think about isolating our opponents, persuading the middle, and then motivating and mobilizing our base, we turn spectacles like this into art. So these are stickers that we've distributed thousands of at this point as a way to really propagate the frame and really consolidate an approach that we use this direct action to do. And so there's the question of what is your frame? What is your message? And then there's also the question of how is it going to be distributed and popularized? So when Trump issued his executive orders on immigration, we launched a petition platform where anyone could type in their zip code and find a petition to their mayor to expand Sanctuary. And so we did two things there. We said that the way to deal and respond to this federal attack isn't just calling the White House, but it's actually to move the arena to a smaller level, to your mayor, who's probably been making statements about how he plans to protect all of his residents. And then we defined it as something that was beyond not just protecting immigrants, but reducing unjust law enforcement as a whole. Because one, we didn't want to replace a movement to get cops off of campuses with one that said that a sanctuary campus is one where police don't work with ICE. And two, we didn't want to erase the efforts and the progress of the movement for Black lives. And then practically, police are the tip of the funnel for mass deportation, as well as mass incarceration. And so to create cities that are sanctuaries, it has to deal with policing, not just with the role of police's relationship with ICE or four walls of a church. And so it's great that DRUM is going to be going next, because we held a conference where DRUM, BYP, Mijente, and others convened people to really talk about what are the strategies to defy Trump, defend your city, and expand Sanctuary. So you can see the overarching frame that we used to try to populate what was a policy demand, but a much larger impulse. We popularized it through op-eds like this one that we published in Univision, redefining what makes a sanctuary now, challenging where city budgets more than half go to policing and jails. We commissioned artists like Monica Trinidad to turn it into art that got shared. I think this one got shared 600 times on May Day. And then for us at a national level, part of what we hope to do is provide strategic guidance and inspiration so that things can be adapted. Like in Louisville during the Kentucky Derby, where everyone drinks mint juleps, they took the Sanctuary campaign and they made it about staying fresh and crushing ice. And so finally, what have we done and what haven't we done? I don't think that we've changed the dominant narrative on Sanctuary. I think it's still very much under attack. I think Jeff Sessions is still a giant threat, but we have redefined it and raised the standards within the movement. We have changed it from a primarily white, primarily face-based, four walls approach to saving and protecting people to one where it's about challenging the criminalization of Black, Brown, Muslim, and Arab communities. We did that through combining organizing and communications, using media as a way to amplify the work that's happening on the ground. And we did it by providing open platforms with initial leadership and strategic guidance for people to be innovating on, like the example of Louisville. And finally, once we open up campaigns like this, then rooting it in stories means that it changes the advocacy as well. And so when ICE raided a certain person's home in Chicago, breaking his arm in the process, that was the moment that that person found out he was in the gang database. And he was in the gang database because he was a victim of a drive-by shooting as a bystander. And so now BYP and Mijente and OCAD in Chicago have been able to take his story and pry open the question of Chicago's use of databases and profiling as ways that funnel people into mass incarceration and into mass deportation, and really lift up that if we're to defy Trump, if we're to defend our cities, and if we're to expand Sanctuary, it means building amongst each other within our communities. It means protecting and defending, and it means moving our local officials to change their policies to invest in communities instead of policing them. And so I'll pass it back to the admin over here.
Hi all, thank you, B, and thank you, Janae. So we're going to do our last case study with Roxana and with Karina. So I'll pass it on to you guys.
Hello everyone, this is Roxana. I'm from DRUM, and Karina from GAP is with me. So I'm going to start off. So DRUM, along with Global Action Project and several other partners here in New York City, that also work with other impacted communities, have been organizing hate-free zones. We launched this in December 2nd of last year, right here in particular neighborhoods in Queens that for us as DRUM and a lot of the other organizations that we partnered with have the highest concentration of impacted frontline community members. So some of the names of the groups are listed in there. And then in January, we launched it again in Kensington, Brooklyn, and we've had other launches by other partner organizations in Hudson Valley, New York, Alexandria, Virginia. And for us, Hate-Free Zone was an intentional thought around like what we wanted after the elections, that due to all the instability that people were facing and the fear that people were anticipating, we wanted to have a response to it, and our membership came up with this idea of called hate-free zones, in that these are actual physical places where frontline community members are to be protected from institutional, interpersonal, and individual violence. And we said a hate-free zone instead of general sort of community defense, which is often being defined in like the way that people are responding. And for us, the difference was that community defense, for us, didn't really entirely include everything that we wanted to envision. I think for us, Hate-Free Zone and the title of Hate-Free Zone, Love and Protect Each Other, was much more encompassing that yes, we have to fight against these systems that are attacking our communities and institutions that are hurting our communities, but we also have to lay out a foundation for a completely new way for our communities to relate to each other. In that you need to have impacted communities actually building more bridges across other impacted communities. And we kind of use more internally and externally now the term frontline communities. And what we mean by frontline communities is this idea of front lines is are people who have front seats to the experiences that they are struggling against. That means people who are undocumented, workers, immigrants, people of color, Black communities, women, young folks, queer, trans communities, that these are all communities that have faced like systemic violence and deserve to have the space to create their own way of creating dignity and respect and protections. So it's similar to the idea of what B was saying about expanded sanctuary, but I think we've moved away from the term of sanctuary and the sort of connotation that it often comes with, and just being only about undocumented and immigrant folks, but to be much more inclusive with the term that we're using in frontline communities to include the full spectrum of impacted folks. When we're talking about the way that we use media in hate-free zones, it's a different way that we've been using it. A lot of our media work as DRUM is very local and much more centered around ethnic media, in that we have a membership base that speaks an average of 5 languages at every membership meeting. And that means 5 different languages of media that we have to be able to reach other community members that are out here, that are our members, that are not our members, that we want to be able to get our message across about what are we doing with hate-free zones, what is hate-free zones, and how people can be a part of that. And a lot of that requires us being able to have articles placed into these multiple ethnic media outlets that are here in our neighborhoods, because a lot of our folks are very new and recent immigrants, and therefore their accessibility to the English language is limited, especially in print. So we have built our relationships with these ethnic medias to be able to cover our events and to actually allow us to insert certain editorials and publications that speak from the perspective of folks in like those languages on an issue that maybe they can't entirely relate to yet, especially around things around police killings, that while it does impact them, right, but it is something that our communities to understand around what the Black Lives Matter movement is, what the whole sanctuary movement is. Those are all things that typically our newspapers do not cover. Unless we're actually going in there and inserting our voices and getting our members and leaders interviewed through that, and then getting like our events to actually be covered. And for us, this is an important piece because oftentimes like organizations, right, like it's often the aim to have the mainstream media hits, to be able to access cable news, to get like mainstream publications like the Daily News here in New York City. But what we found is that the reality is that those aren't where most of our folks are actually getting their news from in the first place, that they're actually getting it from their very local ethnic press. And we had to make an intentional concerted effort to maximize our coverage through them, as well as what we do generally on social media. So I think now we're gonna show a video about the use of the symbol of the ants. So hate-free zone has a lot of symbolism to it. But before we go into the video, I think we're going to show the launching of our hate-free zone in Queens.
We could get that. Could we play that first video? Not this. The last one. The last slide. Yeah.
Hey y'all, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why the video is not working.
Can we try the other video then? The next video?
concerned workers. They share their labor with each other. They can carry weight several times their body mass. They are resilient and can figure our strategies and collectively ensure the survival. They are perfect symbol of the collective strength for all our communities and what we are capable to difficult this time. It is our duty to win. It is our duty to win. We must always protect each other. We must always protect each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We have nothing to lose but our chains. It is our duty to fight. It is our duty to fight.
Okay.
Can we get to the next slide?
Okay. So in the video, it probably wasn't entirely clear, but there was a long stretch white banner that folks were marching with, that they were holding onto the side, that you see these pictures of, and on them are these black ants, these cartoonish ants, and that's representing the symbol of the hate-free zones, love and protect each other. And it was a decision that our members made, that they wanted to go with something that represented the sort of collective strength of impacted communities and the ability to bear burdens that are much larger than us, but to have like really good strategic thinking that comes out of our collective thinking. And we had this created by our youth members, but particularly led by one of our youth leaders, Mahira, who now runs our Moving Arts project. And the video and the use of the ant symbol was because we wanted to think of something that would be appealing to people across political spectrum, that would get minimal resistance from people, because these are things that we made into like stickers that for people who are going to join up in part of the hate-free zones in their businesses, in like their shops, that they were going to put this on, that they would be able to accept this symbol of like, you know, working class, impacted communities, strength to show their support for hate-free zones. We had come up with this, and the use of hate-free zones, love and protect each other, really comes back from Asadia's chant. And again, it's about collective strength. And this symbolism wouldn't have been possible without the Moving Arts project that our youth is running. And it's basically a program that we just started this year to actually have other working class immigrant, Desi folks who are interested in using cultural work to have a stronger presence in our organizing. For us as DRUM, the membership that we have, we don't come from a culture that has like unified language, unified culture. So we've always struggled a bit on like our cultural organizing part, and this is the first time this year that we've actually had a program that's designed to be a concerted effort that's geared towards specifically for people to actually enhance their cultural work and insert that into the organizing, and so the result of that is specifically the hate-free zones work. So I'm going to hand it over to Gap around the way that we've partnered around our videos.
Hey, well, can we go back to the next slide? I think there might have been a slide missing. Yes, this one. And this one shows what Roxana was talking about in terms of people creating the ants, right, leading up to People's Assembly, and also the banner on the far right, the right photo, if you can see it. So people would stick up, it was part of the People's Assembly, people would stick up ants and design their ants to be able to be a part of the banner. So hi y'all, my name is Karina, and I'm the Community Media and Action Coordinator at Global Action Project, and I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the partnership and the media production process, and what that's looked like as part of the Hate-Free Zone partnership. And so GAP and DRUM have had a history of partnering together through GAP's Community Media in Action program, which is our partnership program. And through that, our members have developed media together, usually over a period of anywhere from 7 weeks to 3 months, that allows for them to really own and shape the messaging of the campaigns. But for the hate-free zone work, because this was an important new formation and part of the strategy was for it to spread and to be replicated, we had to integrate that into our own media strategy. And so what we chose was to document the launch using a rapid response model. We decided that to provide immediate visibility, we would produce something that could spread across different social media platforms relatively easily. So it had to be short, have some text, and potentially get picked up by news outlets. And so what we ended up doing was for short videos and using all of the messaging that the DRUM organizers had identified as central to the hate-free zones. So the videos were anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes long, and they covered what a hate-free zone actually looked like and what it would take to create a hate-free zone, what was at stake in the current political climate. It explained and uplifted the ant symbolism. And then the longest video was more of a video press release covering all the key points that were in the actual press release. All of the videos were shot during the hate-free zone launch in Queens and were ready to be distributed within 2 to 3 days. And the production team was 4 people. And so there was 2 people on camera, and that was a GAP alumni who was also an educator with us, and a young person from from Gnayan, who's actually a hate-free zone coalition partner, who had trained in the production with us a few months before. And then on providing live social media coverage was GAP staff, 2 GAP staff, and then also for the editing. I do want to say in terms of the framing, because DRUM had already made sure to center youth, to center trans and gender nonconforming people, women, workers, we didn't have to do much of that work. That work was already done for us in terms of the framing. And then afterwards, we were able to provide similar coverage for the hate-free zone in Kensington, and it got picked up by Pix 11, not using our framing, but was able to reach a broader audience. What we have not done is, and hopefully we hope to do in the future and be able to resource in the future, is actually get the videos, each of the videos translated in the languages that our communities, that'll reach our communities, right? So Spanish, Bangla, and right now, actually, and ultimately, so that it can go into ethnic media and then reach people in our communities that aren't already plugged into the organizing work. I do want to go really quickly into on the production end before we show another clip of another video, short video on the production end. We've been using the rapid response model to train youth leaders at GAP, which right now is predominantly for the community media and action group is mainly trans and gender nonconforming youth leaders, but then also youth participants from partner organizations in the hate-free zones, training them on the production process. So we develop a training where they're all being trained together on security during productions, both digital security, but also basic protection from the police, also basic training on cop watching, how to provide coverage for live social media, live social media coverage for an action, how to handle the camera, how to do the editing work. And meanwhile, they're teaching us about Snapchat and Instagram because they know more on that end. But specific to the training is the relationship building between young movement media makers and youth organizers, and understanding that those 2 things aren't always separate. But we're not just dropping by as like the media consultants and doing the media training. Members from different organizations are getting to know each other, work together, politicize together, speak and build with the organizers in the city about their vision, tactics, and organizing strategies, and all while going out to apply the production skills that they're getting trained on to cover pressers and actions, sometimes for their own campaigns and sometimes for the campaigns of other organizations. But most importantly, we pay them. We pay our youth for their time in training and for their labor in the production process. And so the idea is to start with the training to address an immediate need, But to be able to have these same youth leaders train others, continue building, and eventually, alongside the organizing work that they're already doing, take the lead in developing not only their own media, but the narrative. And we haven't gotten there with the hate-free zones yet, in terms of the cohort that we've been working with, but because it's a relatively new campaign, but we wanted to show an example of what's possible based on the work that DRUM and GAP youth have done together before. So we're gonna show a clip, and that's the next slide. So we're gonna show a clip of "Keep Your Head Up" to transition us a little bit into how our communities begin to own the narratives. Slide back. And "Keep Your Head Up" is a short film by GAP's Youth Breaking Borders program, which drum members are actually a part of also. And it addresses the experiences of being policed and surveillance in New York City pre-Trump, and the differing but also linked struggles of politically active Muslim and Black youth. So, yeah, that's it. So we're gonna start.
There is this rise of Islamophobia in this post 9/11 era.
If you could pause it for a second. Could you pause it for a second? Thanks. Sorry. So we're gonna actually start the video at 5:35, and then end at 7:49. So we're just gonna watch 2 minutes of the entire video.
Muslim communities are persecuted in this country so much that we become police of one another. This has got to stop. We all can turn this world upside down and make it right. Sabo, understand. What's up, Sabo?
What's up? I commit, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yo. The weirdest thing happened to me today.
Oh my God, same.
Alright, you go first. Alright, I go first. Yo, I was walking around, right? And it's crazy because everywhere I go, there were cops. I mean, I think I was hallucinating or something. I don't get it. Everywhere I go, there were cops.
What are you gonna do about it?
I don't know. Wait, tell me what you think of this. Alright. It smells like bacon out here in Astoria. Hashtag FTP, hashtag GMC, hashtag MyNYPD.
Well, that's funny, but I feel like you gotta do more than a hashtag. I'm just saying.
Alright. What you wanna talk about?
Alright, well, I was talking to that teacher.
Who, Mr. B?
Yeah, and I went to him after school, and I was telling him about that hijab incident that happened earlier at lunch, and he just went off on me.
Maybe we should get everyone involved in this conversation. We could get the principal and the dean. Maybe your mom should be involved in the conversation.
And I was like, why are you being so nasty? I just don't understand why.
I mean, come on. It's like a joke. Why would you even go to him in the first place?
I know, it's because he's my homeroom teacher, so like if I went to other teachers, they probably would have just redirected me to him anyway. So, anyway, it's my mom. I gotta bounce.
Alright, cool. And she forgot the water bottle.
Cool. So can we pause it there? Or we could keep watching. Okay. And can we get it to the next slide? Oh, the next slide. Yep.
So excellent acting by Jessie. So part of our work around, transformative organizing principles, and getting impacted folks to actually take ownership of what's happening for themselves through hate-free zone is for people to really look at what safety really means for them, to be about how they want to define it, in that there's a lot of policy changes that are being pushed in a place like New York City that claims to be sanctuary, like many other cities. But I think what we want to have raised up and hate-free zones is to show that people who are impacted, frontline community members, what they think as safety and dignity and respect is the standards that we have to meet, not that of what the compromises that get made on legislations, not what are good, like, you know, talking points for elected officials at certain moments, but from the perspective of people who are the most impacted, for institutions in their communities, in the city, for leaders who have like certain positions in the city to actually take direction and leadership from impacted folks. And for us, it's about the fact that, you know, so many of our impacted community members are often seen as disposable. That's entirely how systems treat them, look at them, and have defined our existence in many ways. And through the hate-free zones work and like the way that people are engaging in it, the idea is to get people to actually transform themselves, to actually not see disposability as an option, not just for themselves, but for any other community of frontline community members, because it's an easy moment for our folks to kind of just think about only about the issues that are impacting them and not understand how much it's also tied up into how other communities are equally but maybe differently impacted, and the importance of building those bridges with each other. And a lot of that is having to like have more intergenerational and like intercommunal spaces, similar to the pictures of like those banners that you saw at the town hall, where we had 200 folks come and talk about how they want to be engaged in the hate-free zones work. What was unique about this town hall is that most town halls in our neighborhoods are often attended and run by allies and people who are not impacted, whereas this one was entirely by people who are impacted community members, run by them, and are going to be moving forward with them.
So in terms of what that looks like for us as media makers, right? We're creating essentially the youth that we're working with are creating these stories, are creating these narratives based on personal experiences, community experiences. We're creating very real characters that are having very real conversations. And the way that that happens is being able to have that in the production process, being able to have very real conversations that come up and that allow us to come face to face with, one, the world that we live in, right? Its contradictions, the many forms of resistance that exist in it, what justice looks like for us and for our communities, and how we want to move in the world. And what that looks like in terms of the production process is the space that we create for it, right? So one of the key practices that we use is setting community norms. For all of the time that we work together, and including when we're on production, right? And revisiting those community norms when and if it's necessary to be able to guide those conversations. And so that allows us to have those conversations about what sanctuary means to us, what safety means to us, what the impacts of surveillance are. But it also grounds us, and it allows us to move towards collective understanding and grow our commitment. That's what we've seen the process look like as a part of the work that we've done with DRUM and at GAP. And so all of this is precious but necessary work for youth development, yes, but also for the development of our movement, and especially for creating real sanctuary. Part of the intentional long-term partnership that DRUM and GAP have developed, but that also applies to the hate-free zone work, is looking to each other to be able to looking to each other for support, so we can create new systems that are our own, that we own, and that includes media to uplift our work. And in terms of the transformative organizing piece, right, that means that our own people are leading this work so that it's accountable and it's participatory, and that it's responding, growing, and evolving based on community needs, so that it's rooted in community action and it's strategic, right, because it's grounded in the organizing work. And it's significant for us, it's significantly different from the process the process different in terms of having an artist or consultant come in who's not from frontline communities, and completing a product and then leaving, because members don't have as much ownership over it, not just over the narrative, but the life and the usability of the video or the artwork past the final product. And Roxanne, did you want to add anything? Do you want to? That's all. Cool. So we'll transfer it over to Lenina. Lenina, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, we had a few questions. We won't have time to answer them, but I will read some of them out. We were asked about, were the majority of these films made by youth? What's the difference between youth media and organizing? How are the hate-free zones maintained? And also, what are some of the best practices in rapid response moments in order to do media work in terms of youth in particular? So it's 4:28. We will not, I'm not sure if we'll have any space now for questions, but here are some of the resources. Some of you were asking in the chat about the films in this and also the report that were in this webinar. So you can find these resources here. And also we are tweeting on Expand Sanctuary. That's the hashtag that we're using for the day. So if you have any other questions, if some of the panelists could look onto that hashtag, see if they find questions that they would be willing to answer, and we can do that as well. Oh, and we can also stay on to address a few questions in the next 5 to 10 minutes as well. So for those of you that hope to stay on, I'm just going to go into one of the questions here. So there was a question about the videos being made by youth and the difference between youth media and organizing. Jesse or Karina, Roxana, any of you want to take that question?
Lena, can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
There was an initial question asked about, were some of these videos made by youth? Like were the majority of these videos made by youth? And also, what is the difference between youth, just producing youth media, and organizing? What's the link and the difference?
I can talk in terms of the GAP videos. They were produced. The rapid response one, we had young people involved, right, in terms of the camera work, but then the editing work was supported by staff. And then for other events, right, we do live tweeting, and people are part of that as well. For the Keep Your Head Up, that was fully youth produced, because that was a much longer process. And in terms of, I'm also seeing a best practices question in terms of rapid response moments, which I think addresses some of that organizing work, is that our youth members are part of the conversations when we develop best practices, are part of those conversations and developing that. And so that's one way, but I think that also the way that we use the media and the media production process is directly linked to support organizing work, right? So organizing, you could outreach with media, right? You could do direct actions that are supported by media. Research and participatory research is also part of the media production process, right? So it's not being able to integrate those two processes is key to the organizing work and to the media work.
Okay, and so and also like in terms of the hate-free zones, there was a question about how the hate-free zones are maintained. Roxana, did you want to take that question?
Sure. So the hate-free zones, this work that we're doing, it's maintained through like our outreach and the relationships that we build with community partners, like the organizations that we're working with, but also through the regular events that we are trying to schedule. We're plan on having more town halls and community gatherings and trainings, but also to do the day-to-day outreach across our community members to each other's local businesses, to put up the Hate Free Zone stickers, to take up the Hate Free Zone pledge, and you know, these are things that we are just starting out with. So how it's maintained largely depends on kind of the labor and input of like the community partners in being able to maintain it.
Great, thank you. So we have a question about encouraging intergenerational engagement with elders who may not be as familiar with internet or social media as younger organizers. So how about B and then Roxana to take that question?
I mean, I think that the example of the hate-free zones is a really good one of going door to door. I think for us after the elections, we saw that this is really a time to get back to basics in terms of base building, that our campaigns and our organizations have actually relied on the smoke and mirrors of communications for a little too long. And so any of these strategies is as good as the people who will actually turn up and turn out to make it real in person and in real life. We talk about working URL and IRL. And so having those multiple points of engagement. Obviously, social media is a powerful tool and one that skews towards youth. And that's one of the things that we've really focused on. We found that in families, there's actually a dynamic where parents will rely on their children as a source of information and as a source of connection to the internet. So there's almost a vicarious browsing that's happening by parents asking their kids to look for things on the internet as well, for folks who really are detached from the internet as a whole. But the digital work and the media work has to be combined with the day-to-day and door-to-door work of building our communities into strength that can withstand these times.
Thank you. So I think this is a really good question as well. What are some of the best practices in fast, rapid response moments for youth to continue to lead the media strategy? So addressing rapid response moments. Maybe Karina, do you want to take that? Or Jesse?
I can just say, like I was mentioning before, in terms of the rapid response, right? One of the things is the crew of 9 with community in action that we started with. We use the rapid response as the training, right? Because it's pretty basic, right? It's like we gotta have our establishing shots. We gotta make sure we have the speakers, right? We gotta know who the organizers are. We gotta do some basic research on the event, right? And then allowing through that learning process for them to also shape what those best practices are based on experience. Obviously, us providing some of that guidance from what we know from when we know from other organizers and from our work in media. But allowing them to really be able to, okay, when we go out, this is what we need to do, right? There was one other key point to that I'm forgetting right now, sorry. But Jesse, do you want to add to?
I would just say that, building off that is long term, I think that it's really crucial that we're supporting young people, but also just all the community members that our organizations are working with to be able to have some capacity around the rapid response media, and people can plug in different ways. So some people could be producing videos, other people could be people who are training people around how to do storytelling and how to frame a message, and that these are things that are in order to do it really effectively in the short term with rapid response moments, we have to be investing in people's leadership development and all of these different strategies and leadership capacities over the long haul.
Yeah, did anyone else want to comment? I'm thinking about maybe in terms of just like how you were talking before about creating different platforms that sort of also allow for people to create in the moment and get things out.
I mean, I think that we see youth and social media already as the primary place for rapid response. I'm thinking about Ferguson and the person who was actually tweeting from the block where Mike Brown was shot as the way that actually started breaking that news and calling people to action. And so part of, I think, the effort of making sure that our communities are tied together and that our communities are prepared and resilient is that the ICE raid or the police violence isn't going to necessarily happen where an organizer is every single day, or definitely where office headquarters in DC is. And so it's really about bringing these skills to the block and showing people how to do the documentation themselves. Facebook Live and all these things obviously makes it way more accessible. And the Witness and others are also creating apps that are making it so that your live broadcast is connected to the communities who are interested in it. But I think young people already are rapidly responding to everything that's happening in their lives. And when it's something negative like this, or when it's a social justice moment, we build into the spectacles that we do live streaming before Facebook even did it. We built in live streaming knowing that we're playing to our specific audience. And that we're really trying to inspire folks from Jump Street. So I think there's a way to plan ahead for it, and then there's a way to just equip communities to be ready for it, whether it's a quinceañera or whether it's a moment that needs action.
Right, and also just on behalf of FCYO, I put this in the link in the chat, but encouraging youth organizing groups out there to register for our youth organizing landscape map. Is one of the ways that, it's not the only way, to have you all tell us what you're doing, allow us to be a better, more informed advocate within philanthropy for your work, to help try and get you more money, to help just advocate for your work in a more informed way. We really want to stay, on top of everything that's going on. So that's a resource, and then of course, like everyone who's on this call has a link to us to just keep the communication open. We'd love to hear more about your work and stay more informed.
Thanks, everybody. Again, just wanted to thank the folks that came onto this call and pulled this together. It was definitely a collaborative project to bring together all of the media, the slides, and just all of the information. And I think everyone did an amazing job. So thank you to Global Action Project, to Funders Collaborative on Youth Organizing, BYP100, Mijente, as he's rising up and moving. And I put into the chat people's Twitter handles, so you can follow folks there. And again, check out this resource guide, and you will find the videos that we couldn't hear some of the audio and things like that, but some of that you can also watch the videos and follow up there and get some more resources, curriculum, trainings, things like that as well. And with that, I just want to say again, this was a great call, and hope to be in touch with all of you in the future. Thank you.
Yep, and we'll all be posted on fcyo.org and also on our Facebook page. So thanks, everyone.
And one final, with the resource guide, one final pitch is there's lists of groups that both do media trainings and media partnerships. So be directly in touch with any of those groups and with us around questions or ideas around how to move forward around transformative media organizing or expanding sanctuary work. Thank you. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Take care. Bye.